Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I'm your host, Hannah Zuberi, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. Thank you for joining us on Muslim Network TV, America's only Muslim-focused network. You can always find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Galaxy 19, and soon Apple TV. In 2017, human rights activists revived a global campaign seeking to pressure status-conscious jewelry retailers to stop buying precious gemstones that are mined primarily by military-linked businesses in Burma, formerly now known as Myanmar. The goal is to make these so-called genocide gems as reviled by jewelry customers as the blood diamonds sourced from warlord-controlled conflict areas in Africa. Additionally, part of the current Kirin campaign related to the Rohingya cause involves divesting from partnerships with the Burmese military. Kirin's breweries in Burma, called Myanmar Brewery Limited and Mandalay Brewery Limited, are currently joint ventures with Myanmar's Economic Holding Public Company, MEHL, which is a company owned and controlled by Burma's military. One of the organizations raising awareness regarding this issue is the International Campaign for the Rohingya. Now, the International Campaign for Rohingya not only is a part of these campaigns, but they're also a part of a coalition that is pushing for ending doing business with genocide. So with us today is Simon Belenez, the Executive Director of the International Campaign for the Rohingya. Simon has over 20 years of experience helping investors, nonprofits, universities, communities, and unions use their power to lobby their governments and hold corporations accountable. I'm going to welcome Simon on. We've worked a lot together on the Rohingya cause. He's a dear colleague and friend, and I'm really excited to welcome him here today so he can tell us a little bit more about himself. Thank you so much for joining us today, Simon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor.
So Simon, tell us more about yourself. Where did you go to school? You have a long decades of experience in activism and advocacy. So please let us know where did you start off? Where did you go to school, and where did your advocacy journey start?
Well, I know my advocacy is very much in the family blood. As a kid and as a teenager, I worked on my father's campaigns for Parliament in Britain as a Liberal Party candidate. So I got involved in politics at a very early age, and through my education, political science as an undergrad, and then an MBA at Boston College here in the States, I became very interested in corporate accountability, and and how we can not only change things in our role as citizens, but also change things in our role as consumers and as our role as investors, using all of the political power and economic power that we have to make a difference with any kind of cause, any kind of issue that we care about.
Mm-hmm. And so you've been part of the Free Burma movement for a really long time as well. Can you tell us how you got involved with the Burma movement, and what are the roles that you played in your career?
Well, I got involved in Burma back in 1992, mm-hmm. when I was working for a socially responsible investment firm. It's named Trillium Asset Management. And in my role doing shareholder advocacy, putting shareholder pressure on companies, mm-hmm. I researched what emerging human rights issues there were for socially responsible investors. Now, since the campaign against apartheid in South Africa was winding down at that time, And I identified three issues that I thought would be very big. Human rights issues, new issues for investors. One was the whole issue of sweatshops. And secondly, issues around companies operating in Burma and operating in China. And I think my research was fairly prescient in terms of the work that I'm currently doing now, whether it's ending the genocide in Burma, and also, work around that Justice for All is also involved in around ending the genocide of the Uyghurs in China. So that's where I started, and really all I've done in my career is I've looked at the toolbox of the South Africa anti-apartheid campaign, and and used those same tools, adapted those tools for whatever campaign I've been involved in. And so,
what are some of those tools? Let's talk about some of those tools.
Sure. I mean, the anti-apartheid campaign, like we're doing now in the case of Burma, is we're looking to put pressure on a country's government to change its behavior, and we're also using economic levers. We're focusing on corporations that do business with their government and support that government economically. And so what the anti-apartheid campaign did with regard to South Africa is the same as what we're doing now with both Myanmar and also the Uyghurs, is that we're pressing for sanctions by Congress. At the same time, we're also helping people put direct consumer pressure and investor pressure on specific companies. Like, for instance, right now, we're working on, in the case of Myanmar, we're working on the case of the Japanese beverage company Kirin, which is in 2 business partnerships with military-owned companies inside Burma. And so we're putting consumer pressure on Kirin, particularly through its brands, which involve a number of craft breweries in the United States, in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And these are all targets which are very susceptible to consumer pressure and media pressure, particularly on social media, because they have reputations and brands that they want to defend. And also, one of the things we did in the case of Burma was I co-authored what became known as the Massachusetts Burma Law, which all I did was I took an old South Africa anti-apartheid bill that was filed in Massachusetts. And again, these were bills that got cities and states to use their power as consumers and as investors to put pressure on companies. And the Massachusetts Burma Law was, all I did is I took an old South Africa selective purchasing law, and I changed the name of the country from South Africa to Burma.
Wow.
That's all I did to co-author this bill.
And you had, yeah, go ahead.
And that bill that we got introduced in '94 and became law in '96, alongside about 20 city ordinances that did the same thing, was it got Massachusetts and it got these cities that they effectively would not buy goods and services from companies that did business in Burma. It was a boycott on steroids, involving billions of dollars of municipal and state purchasing power. And that law is a model for the current bill that we both worked on, the Maryland End Genocide bill, which similarly gets Maryland in its power as buyers of billions of dollars of goods and services, and investor of billions of dollars of state pension funds, again, to put pressure on companies not to do business with governments engaged in genocide or crimes against humanity. So these are the tools we've been using, and
tell us more about that. It wasn't an easy win for you. This went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes.
In fact, we what happened with the Massachusetts Burma Law is, your bill, your laws are very successful when companies come out and try and get your law struck down. You know, as the old saying goes, if you're being hit by flak, you're on target. And so a group of companies led by the National Foreign Trade Council took Massachusetts to federal court, saying the law was unconstitutional. And this went all the way to the US Supreme Court. And the US Supreme Court, actually 20 years ago, almost this month, ruled that the federal sanctions on Burma preempted state and local Burma selective purchasing laws. They did strike the law down. But based on that experience, we rewrote, I spent a lot of time rewriting the bill and creating this Maryland End Genocide bill that gets around all of the lines of constitutional attack that were levied in federal court. And so we have a bill now in the Maryland legislature and a model bill that could be taken into any city or any state or any county that I think is constitutional challenge proof. And you know, I mean, frankly, it was in some ways it was very useful when companies took the Massachusetts Burma law to federal court, because it created a tremendous publicity. Still more companies pulled out of Burma, and of those 100 companies that pulled out of Burma, none of them went back after the law was struck down. So I think
none of them. I want to just repeat that. None of them went back to Burma after.
None of them went back to Burma after the law was struck down by the Supreme Court. In fact, again, through corporate campaigns, we got more companies to pull out.
And just to put this in context for our viewers, the Burma crisis did not start with the Rohingya people. It didn't start with even the taking away of their citizenship. Burma has been in crisis for much longer for a variety of reasons. Can you just fill our viewers in who may not be knowledgeable about the history of Burma on why there was such a powerful movement against the military regime in Burma?
And it really boils down fairly simply to one key issue, and that is military rule of Burma. Because the Burmese military, which has essentially ruled since 1962, when it overthrew the civilian government, the military is the source of the problems in Burma. You know, they have, in the case of the Rohingya, the military has, you know, used pervasive prejudice against Muslims and against the Rohingya as a way to carry some popularity, which they largely lack inside Myanmar. And so the military has always portrayed itself as the only force that can keep Myanmar together, because Myanmar is a country which is about 1/2 to 2/3 ethnic Burman and about 1/3 to 1/2 different ethnic minorities. And it's not a country that has actually come together as a nation like a lot of multi-ethnic countries have. And one of the main reasons why, and one of the exacerbating factors behind that, is the Myanmar military and its desire to use these divide and conquer tactics to maintain its power. And so that's why we're so focused on the Burmese military, because the real solution to the bulk of the problems in Myanmar is to get the Burmese military out of the government, out of the economy, into the barracks under civilian control. And the tactics that we're all using right now, you know, to sanction the military, go after the Burmese military's business interests, take the Burmese military to the International Court of Justice on charges of genocide, and so forth. These are all part of a broader strategy of getting the Burmese military out of power, so they can't cause a problem anymore.
Now, so a lot of us, we live in a very consumeristic society, and we're socially trained to purchase, to buy. A lot of us do not have that second, like ethical buying is not something that is taught in high schools or middle schools. This is not something that is, unless a family practices this, it's very hard to know what is coming, what you're buying off the shelf, who made it, what labor practices were implemented on them. So, and this allows for businesses and corporations to exploit workers, from minority groups without anyone raising a finger. So, can you contextualize this for us in terms of what is happening in Burma? How are workers treated there? Is that a part of the problem, or is it just that the fact that these corporations are owned by the military?
Well, the big part of the problem is the fact that these are companies owned by the military and provide the military with the legitimacy and funding. But let's look at the gem trade. Our Genocide Gems campaign really focuses in on this. What's interesting about the gems from Burma, jade and rubies. The extraction of these gems and the trade in these gems is dominated by the Burmese military. And so if you come across Burmese jade or Burmese rubies, the assumption is the overwhelming assumption is that these in some way have profited the Burmese military. But the problem is not just the military ownership. There's also how these gems are mined. Now, the bulk of the gems and the rubies are being mined in Kachin State up in the north.
Yes.
I've been to Kachin State. I was there 5 years ago, and it was very eye-opening. It was the first time that I ever went to a region that was clearly under military occupation. The Kachins are a separate ethnic group from the Burmans. When I went up there, my Kachin friend took me around the capital city, Myitkyina, and he pointed out that all of the signs on the stores are either in Burmese or English. None of them are in the Kachin language.
Oh, wow.
And he pointed to a monastery that was being built up on a hill, Buddhist monastery for Western meditation tourists. He said, "Yeah, they're building this Buddhist temple, but you can't get permission to build a mosque or a church." And the Kachin are predominantly Baptist Christians. In fact, they're actually American Baptists. The Kachin fought alongside the Americans in World War II against the Japanese, just like the Karen in the South fought alongside the British in World War II. And so these gems are being extracted from Kachin State, a region under military occupation. And we saw in the recent last month, there was a massive landslide that killed dozens of jade miners.
Yes.
These are very unsafe mines. The conditions are terrible. And the proceeds of these fund the military and fund their oppression, not just of the Rohingya, but other ethnic minorities in Burma. So that's kind of like the bigger picture. And this is why on these corporate campaigns going after the Burma's military's business interests, we're seeing all the different ethnic groups inside Burma, the Rohingya, the Karen, the Kachin, coming together around these kinds of economic campaigns that can effectively put pressure on the Burmese military through its business interests.
For those of you who would like to learn more about what the Kachin are doing, are going through, more about that part of Burma, we're going to put up a link over here and show you some of the Stop Genocide website, which has more information about essentially what the Rohingyas went through in Rakhine State, Kachins are going through in the northwest, right, of Burma.
Correct.
Yes. And a lot of times we don't even realize, like when we speak of Burma, we speak of now. If a person could ask, so what's so wrong about having a military run a country, right? What we can tout democracy, we can talk about it, but there are human rights violations in democracies as well. Like, for example, what's happening in India right now. So, what is so wrong with the Burmese military regime?
Well, there are a number of things that are in common when you look at military governments around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they are largely incompetent, they're largely corrupt, and they're largely unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find with a lot of military governments is they know all these things. And they to gain some semblance of popularity, what often these militaries do is they claim to be defenders of the dominant ethnic group, dominant religion, and say, we are defenders of the faith, we are defenders of, they take on a nationalistic tone as a way to hide and distract from their corruption and their incompetence and their lack of support. And that's what we clearly see in Burma. The Burmese military claims to be defending the dominant faith, which is Buddhism, and they are using and exacerbating and fomenting prejudice against the ethnic minorities, and in particular the Rohingya, because the Rohingya are the largest ethnic minority who's also Muslim, and so they can say a lot of things that we've seen in many countries around the world. They say Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are a threat, they're going to try and take over the country, and this is a way the military tries to justify its rule and tries to gain some semblance of popularity. And this is why militaries don't make good governments.
And so there has been, just like what we saw in Rakhine State with the Rohingyas, throughout the country, there have been horrific oppression being committed on the people who are not the main ethnic majority. So now, so explain these genocide gems more in detail for us. So they're harvested in Kachin State, and then what happens to them? How do they get into our jewelry boxes?
Well, what usually happens is after being mined predominantly in Kachin State, the jade, for the most part, gets exported to China, where it's cut and then re-exported. The rubies are more likely to be exported to Thailand, where they're cut and then re-exported. And this is why it used to be hard to crack down on this, because originally companies would say, oh, well, we get our rubies from Thailand, we get our jade from China. No, that was just where it was cut. That wasn't where it was mined. And so back in 2008, Congress passed the Jade Act, which barred the import into the US of any gems that were mined in Burma. They came through third countries. And that built on the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act of 2003, which barred direct imports from Burma of all goods. And so, unfortunately, those sanctions were waived in 2016.
By Obama, people.
Yes, by Obama, by Executive Order.
Biden, yes.
Yep. And because, Burma was fine at that point, wasn't it? It was, that was the argument. We argued strongly against that, but we didn't prevail. And if there's another thing we know about the Burmese military, which has been very clear since 1962, is that when the Burmese military is under sanctions, their behavior improves. Burmese military is not under sanctions, their behavior gets worse. And those sanctions were waived, and not 9 months later, we had the Burmese military were going down this road towards genocide of the Rohingya in August of 2017. So, it just took 9 months
Just
under those sanctions for
exactly.
the behavior to get that badly. And so, we've been working hard, as we all have been, in trying to get a ban on these gem imports through Congress. It remains stuck in the Senate because of Senator Mitch McConnell. But we don't have to rely on getting sanctions passed by Congress. We can employ our own citizen sanctions by putting our own direct pressure, consumer pressure, shareholder pressure on jewelers not to buy these genocide gems. And that's why we have 2 campaigns aimed at Harry Winston, which is a very high-end jeweler owned by Swatch of
Oh, it's
Switzerland.
owned by Swatch?
Owned by Swatch, yes.
Who would have thunk it?
And Angara.com, which is an online jewelry retailer, which buys gems from all kinds of disreputable places, including gems from Colombia that could be, could have been mined by the FARC in that country. And so, and these jewelers have big online presence. They have reputations. They spend a lot of money bolstering up their reputation. And so they are very vulnerable to pressure in the media, and particularly in our social media. And so we've been asking people not just to sign our petition saying they won't buy any jewelry from Harry Winston or Angara.com. We've also been encouraging people to go on these companies' social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, with a simple message saying, I will not buy your jewelry until you stop buying genocide gems from Myanmar.
So for example, if I was going to go buy something, not on a nonprofit salary, but just in case. So if I was going to go out and buy these gems, how would I be able to effectively spot a genocide gem? Is there some, what for just the consumer at a consumer level? What does that, would it be anything that comes out of Burma?
Well, I think the thing to look out for is particularly rubies. The reason we focused on Harry Winston and Angara is that for both companies, we identified a specific item that they're currently selling that contains a Burmese gem. It's advertised as a Burmese ruby.
Okay.
And so you go to Angara, you'll find a Burmese ruby surrounded by diamonds, and it's just $21,000, down from $46,000. And it's right there on the website. In fact, in our petition, we have all kinds of links to not just the items in question, but also to a number of resources which tell you more about the military's involvement in the genocide, the military's involvement in the gem trade.
Genocide.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then we also include links to all of these companies' social media accounts.
Okay.
So you can go on their Facebook, go on their Instagram. I do this periodically when I'm watching TV at night, watching John Oliver or something, and simply go on their the social media accounts and post protest messages on there. And this again is very effective. These companies have invested a lot into their brand and their image and their reputation. Back in December 2017, just by posting on the social media accounts, the Facebook account of Cartier, we got the company to make a pledge it would no longer buy any gems from Burma, period. And it was just through posts on Facebook.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some armchair activism right there, people. Those of you who cannot be out there at our rallies calling for, justice for the Rohingya people, the least you can do is do some armchair activism and actually get on these Facebook pages and ask them not to purchase rubies from Burma.
Exactly. It's something you can do from home, from your computer, from your phone.
Mm.
And we make it as easy as possible for people. We have on our website our petition to Kirin. Actually contains a link to a blog entry I wrote, which has all the social media accounts on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I found that New Belgium Brewery, which is owned by Kirin,
Mm-hmm.
they were very sensitive when I started posting messages on their job postings on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
That really bothered them. I got a direct message from them complaining about my incessant posts. And so, yeah, this is an excellent way in which you can make a change, make a difference, every day. Just get up in the morning, put a couple of posts down, and do your bit to help end the genocide in Burma.
Mm-hmm. And are most rubies, I think we're going to show some of that Angara rubies that come from Burma. How many percentage of the rubies in the world do you know come from that region?
I mean, it's a lot of the jade and a lot of the highest quality rubies.
Mm.
And so, and they have in the past been not only been known as Burmese rubies, but also as blood rubies, which
Mm-hmm.
turns out to be quite appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, whenever you come across a jeweler with rubies or a jeweler with jade, then you should start asking some questions as to where those particular gems came from.
Mm. And yes, if they're selling for hundreds and thousands of dollars, and this is directly, obviously, lining the pockets of the military so they can then now purchase more weapons that train their guns on these, oppressed communities in Burma. And
Exactly. I mean, the Burmese army gets millions of dollars every year from the gem trade, maybe even more than they get from the government.
wow, that is just something to dwell on and think about, especially those of it's wedding season. A lot of people, and especially in the Muslim community, we don't value diamonds as much as we do other gems. I straight up, most of the jewelry that you'll see in many of the Muslim cultures, from South Asia, from Arab countries, African countries, the jewelry is very gem heavy. It's the sapphires, the rubies, the emeralds, those are really valued. And a lot of brides wear jewelry that's very colorful, so they'll have those colorful gems. So it's very important to pay attention to where your rubies are coming from, where your gems are coming from, during this wedding and Eid season. So another question that I had for you, that is so typical of like the what we're seeing on screen now. That is very typical jewelry that you will find on many masjids on Eid day. The sisters will be rocking their jewelry, and much of it will look like that. So it's very important for the Muslim community to pay attention to where we're buying our gems from. So now let's, Simon, I really want to ask you, this is what a consumer can do. What else can be done on a much bigger level? We talked about cities and city counts, how cities and states were purchasing their purchase powers. What about investment portfolios of, regular investment portfolios that people, ethical investing? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've done is back in 2016, I was contacted by Azad Asset Management, based in Falls Church in Virginia, and they wanted my help because for 20 years I'd filed shareholder resolutions at Chevron, which is the largest U.S. investor in Burma. They own a couple of gas pipelines in Burma. They've owned those for 20 years. And that's where we filed the first shareholder resolution using Azad shares that asked Chevron to adopt a policy of not doing business with governments engaged in genocide or crimes against humanity.
And Azad is a Muslim-owned
yes,
organization. Yeah,
it specializes in serving the investment needs of the Muslim American communities. Yeah, and so that's a place where you can find investments that are aligned with Muslim values. It's one of many. It's definitely a good place to start. It's Azad Asset Management, and they have a real track record of taking action on Myanmar and the Uyghurs and other issues. And there's actually a whole community. Azad is one of many firms, many mutual funds that do socially responsible investment. That's where my career started in this work. And it makes sure that people's money is invested in both their financial interests and in alignment with their values. And it involves both, avoiding investment in certain companies, but also where you are invested in a company, using your power as a shareholder to put pressure on that company to change its behavior through shareholder activism, particularly through the filing of shareholder resolutions that come up for a vote of shareholders at the company's annual shareholder meeting. And it was through this shareholder resolution at Chevron that I first started working with Azad Asset Management. And after the attacks on the Rohingya in August 2017, we got investors with over $50 billion of assets under management to write to all of the oil companies doing business in Burma that are publicly traded. So it included not just Chevron, the US company, but also Total of France. It also included PetroChina, Petronas of Malaysia, Woodside of Australia. And again, with the same ask, adopt a policy of not doing business with governments engaged in genocide. We also had a similar letter that went to all of the major jewelers around the Genocide Gems issue. And again, this has been very effective. Chevron told the BBC, they publicly stated that because of the pressure from shareholders, they were raising human rights issues directly with the Myanmar government, which is exactly what we want to see. We want these companies to put pressure on the Myanmar government and say, there are lines that you cannot cross. If you commit genocide, if you keep committing crimes against humanity, you're going to lose the investment and lose the trade that you both want and need. And that's a real point of leverage with governments like Myanmar. They rely on foreign investment, they rely on foreign trade.
So where is that campaign now to get Chevron out of Burma?
I mean, the resolution withdrawn at Chevron. Chevron is helping to pull together companies, NGOs, and government officials to look deeper into what companies can do in countries and situations like Myanmar. We also filed another shareholder resolution with Friends Fiduciary, which is a Quaker investing organization. And they filed a resolution at Western Union back in December, which was a target of a consumer boycott that we launched to get Western Union to drop as one of its agents inside Burma a Burmese military-owned bank. And it was actually 1 week after the filing of that resolution that Western Union dropped that military-owned bank as its agent. And so we were able to withdraw that resolution. And so we're going to be doing similar shareholder resolutions at Kirin, Swatch, because of Harry Winston. We're going to explore this with Angara and other companies. And at the same time, we're going to do what we did with Western Union, get a whole range of NGOs to sign a letter to the company. And also we have the consumer boycott that anyone can join in on, and also go after the company on their social media. So it's all of a piece, and there's a much larger campaign that any organization or any individual can plug into, participate in, and make a difference.
And this is one of the things, like we both work in this field. One of the things that we get a lot of pushback on is people don't understand, what are the nonprofits doing? Why, what is there even this reason to have all these nonprofits work on this cause? And I've heard, the nonprofit, obviously there is this nonprofit industry, and it does affect some causes negatively. But so I'd like you to explain, and as I've been listening to you, and obviously I know your work, and having known you and met you, there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes that nobody ever knows. So walk us through that. Walk us through, like, what is the sort of, like, just what does it take, for Cartier to stop buying gems? What does that take from a nonprofit's perspective?
It's nonprofits who have researchers both inside Burma and outside of Burma who are doing the research on the Burmese military's business interests, finding out what they own, who their foreign investor partners are, and looking for ways in which people can add their weight and add their pressure. And so there's the research, there's the organizing. We've both taken information about what companies are doing to support the military, and got that information out, done in the form of petitions, handed out phone numbers, social media accounts that people can link into. All of that campaign organization takes a lot of work, so it's easy for people to lend their time and lend their money to putting the most effective pressure on the Burmese military that we can think of. I've been part of the excellent lobby days that you've organized in Congress. We've gotten people all around the country lobbying their members of Congress face to face. We also, International Campaign for the Rohingya, we're always sending out action alerts where people can just put in their address, and it sends an email straight to their member of Congress. Then they get a response email back saying, now here's a phone number you can use to call the office directly to follow up and keep the pressure on, all the time. So, this kind of research, this kind of organizing, as you said, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a certain amount of money, but it's all when I look at nonprofits, we do so much with so little resources. We're up against multi-billion-dollar industries.
Exactly.
And powerful governments with our tiny funding and tiny staffing. Yet we're able to help mobilize a multitude of people to take action, and that's what makes the difference.
Yes, and that's so what you just said. It's like David and Goliath, right? Mm-hmm. When you're so but you're on the right path, and you're the strategizing too. That takes a lot of time too. The research, and keeping this genocide, especially the Rohingya genocide, in the hearts and minds of people, because our news cycles move so quickly, and there's so much going on in the world. So to actually keep the spotlight on these group of people that really have no one else to advocate for them. Now I'm seeing in the past couple of years, which is so powerful to see Rohingya voices themselves, especially from within Burma and the ones that are in Bangladesh, being able to speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves. But for the longest time here in the United States, there wasn't anybody who even knew what the Rohingya were, right? So this is something really, really, and it's wonderful to see all the work that has been done, and to chip away, and we need to keep chipping away at these roots of oppression, so this thing comes crashing down. And so the people of Burma themselves, who also are oppressed by this military, can find space to grow. And when another thing that we've also talked about is that, and people often forget, when the military owns all the businesses, then the people of Burma don't get a fair share. They don't get to own businesses. They don't get to, the youth over there don't get to make investments and run their own companies, because everything is being stagnated, and everything is being like, there's this big giant monopoly over this by the military. So that is also something that a lot of people forget when they're talking about this. So I'd love to get your comments on that.
Yeah, and I see you put up, thank you for putting up the website for the international campaign for the Rohingya. It's at rohingyacampaign.org. And if you go on there, there's a big button that says Take Action. And that will allow you to sign the petition to the Japanese beverage giant Kirin. And that also gets you on our email list. And you'll get updates on all the campaigns we're doing: Genocide Gems, lobbying the Senate, lobbying Congress, putting the petition that we're all working on to get the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to issue a determination that genocide has been going on in Myanmar. That allows you to get involved right away. And again, if you take the Kirin action, you'll get, and it's right there, it's all sourced. You can dig out more information there. You can go into the documents much deeper. And you also get a link to our the blog that I wrote on how you can put pressure on Kirin every day just from your home phone, from your home computer. And that has links to all of Kirin's social media sites that you can post protest notes on. So yeah, please do take the action, get involved, and be part of the big movement of solidarity for the Rohingya.
Mm-hmm. No, this is so, yes, as August comes around, August is the month where the exodus of Rohingya started in 2017, and it'll mark the 3-year anniversary. We do want to invite everybody to the Burma conference that Justice for All is hosting, the Burma Task Force of Justice for All is hosting. You can go to justiceforall.org/Burma conference and register yourself. It's imperative that we have people talking to each other who are working on this cause, so we can strategize, hear from experts, really move the needle forward, because currently it's kind of been stuck for the past year or so. We're also waiting for November 2020. We're hoping that Kentucky decides to kick Mitch McConnell out of office so something can actually happen on the Senate floor, and many of these bills that have been held up because of personal interests can finally be passed. So as we wrap up the hour, we're just, any final words, Simon?
Well, I think, again, just want to underscore how people can take effective action right now, right away. Keep writing your senators, keep making sure that they're on board the congressional sanctions on Burma. But again, every day, let's get these companies out directly through our direct pressure as consumers, as investors. Let's each of us pledge to take a couple of actions each day in solidarity with the Rohingya. I would hesitate to say that this time next year, we may well have to be working on different companies, because I don't expect Kirin, I don't expect Harry Winston, I don't expect Angara to be continuing to do business with the Myanmar military all that long. with the pressure we're able to put on them.
That is brilliant. And thank you for your inspiring work, Simon, and for being always a smiling face on lobby days, working. And that's what I really admire about you, that you've been working on this very heart wrenching cause for so long, but you managed to keep your smile and your spirit up. So thank you so much for being such an amazing comrade. We're going to show the Genocide and War Crimes in Burma, Finding Paths Forward. This is the conference that is coming up on August 9th. Please visit justiceforall/Burma conference to register and learn how we can move the needle forward. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. This is your host, Hannah Zaberi, and you've been watching us on Muslim Network TV, on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Samsung Galaxy 19, and soon Apple TV. Assalamu alaikum.